What a big week it was for pro days around the NFL. We talked about this right after the combine when Bryce Young didn't throw and all the other quarterbacks did. And we had a look at the schedule for the pro days. And they were back to back to back. And it was amazing to see how they were set up. And I don't know if these schools coordinate this or not, because I think there's been a time where, two of the more notarized quarterbacks or notable quarterbacks had pro days on the same day, and you had to pick one. Which one were you going to attend? So I don't think these teams coordinated, set it up where, hey, when are you having your pro day? Okay, we'll have ours here. But it just so happened that on Wednesday, CJ Stroud had his pro day. On Thursday, Alabama and the Crimson Tide had their pro day, which featured Bryce Young. And then Friday, Will Levis was at Kentucky having his pro day. And next week, I think next Thursday, we'll see the final massive quarterback in this year's draft class, Anthony Richardson, perform at the Florida pro day. So it was amazing to see how they just kind of fell in line back to back to back. I had a chance to take a look at each and every single one of these pro days. And I want to talk about them, and I want to talk about the impact of these pro days, how I feel about these quarterbacks, where I project them in the league, and so forth. So let's do it. We are going to jump into this discussion about these pro days because pro days matter, whether you want to hear that or not. I've got a take on that, but we'll talk more about it here on the 321st installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 321st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your stepman, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So today is the culmination of what is one of the biggest weeks in recent memory for quarterbacks in a draft from a pro day perspective. I don't recall a time where we had this many big-time quarterbacks in a row throwing. And I think we might have seen the actual order that they're going to go in the NFL draft, with Stroud going 1, Young going 2, and Will Levis going 3 or 4. I still contend that the 3 spot is a hot spot if someone were to come up. If you're looking for a quarterback and you fall in love with, say, a Will Levis, right? You had a chance to meet with him at the combine briefly. You saw him throw at Indy. You go down to Kentucky, to Lexington, you watch him throw again, you have a nice little conversation afterwards, you decide to meet with him, and you fall in love with this kid. Say you're the Raiders and you fall in love with Will Levis, right? Why not go to 3 and get in front of Indy? Indy's bullshitting. I mean, they think they can just sit there and Arizona's going to do nothing. And if I'm the Cardinals, I'm shopping the pick. If nobody wants to come up, fine. I'll take, Will Anderson and call it a day. But if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, you're going to trade DeAndre Hopkins. You're passing and punting on the 2023 season. You're going to stink this year. Kyler Murray's going to miss at least the first half of the season. You got no talent on that football team whatsoever to carry you through without Kyler Murray. And even with Murray, there's still question marks. This is going to be a bad year for the Arizona Cardinals. Why not pick up draft capital? Even if it's not in this year's draft, but more so for next year's draft, so be it. Put yourself in a position to fast track your way back to being a formidable football team, because right now you're not. You're in a rebuilding phase, whether you want to admit it or not, if you're Arizona. And the Colts are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs as if nothing can happen. Well, somebody can jump in front of you and you can be left with Anthony Richardson. And if that's what you're cool with, if you're sitting at 4 and you're Indianapolis and you're like, hey, it doesn't really matter to us. We like all 4 of the quarterbacks and we'll take any of them. Fine. Then just sit at 4. One will be in there. One will be there. One, you're guaranteed to get one and you have nothing to worry about. Similar to what we saw the 49ers do, back in 2021 when they traded up to 3 and they said, hey, we like 3 quarterbacks in this draft class. And no matter which one falls to us, whether it's Lawrence, Wilson, or Lance, we're going to be fine just, at 3 the way we are, right? That's why they were able to trade up to 3, because no matter how the order shuffled around, they were going to be fine. They liked all three. If you're Indy and you like all four, then just stay at 4. But if you don't, you're really playing a dangerous game of Russian roulette, assuming that no one else is going to come up to 3. Arizona doesn't need a quarterback. So obviously that pick should be open for business, but we'll see what ultimately happens. We'll continue to talk about that. I've already made it known that I think the Cardinals are going to come out of 3 and allow someone to come up and get a quarterback there. More likely than not, Will Levis. And we'll see the same thing happen that we saw happen back in 2021, where we saw 3 quarterbacks come off the board, 1, 2, and 3. But we'll see. I could be wrong. Arizona could stay right at number 3. No one's really that pressed to go up and get Will Levis. And the Colts can get him at 4. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. I hope your Friday is treating you well and that you're looking forward to a wonderful weekend. It's kind of, overcast here in northern VA. A little dreary outside. It rained earlier. I think it's going to rain a little bit later on tonight as well. So not the most beautiful day. It's been a great week weather-wise here. We just came off of an 80-degree day yesterday. Back to reality, it was 64. I mean, that's not terrible, right? But it's not 80 like it was yesterday. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk some ball. Pro days were running rampant this week, 3 in a row. CJ Stroud in Ohio State had their showcase on Wednesday. Bryce Young at Alabama showcased his skills on Thursday. And today, Will Levis was at Kentucky and having the pro day week come to a close there. Let's talk about it. And the way we're going to do it is one humongous, ginormous gem dropping session. Let's get after it. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I was thinking to myself, the Carolina Panthers are in a really good position. A really good spot. They did themselves a huge solid by doing what they did, trading up, being aggressive. Did you guys hear the rumor about what the Bears were trying to do? This would have been some real OG gangster shit. Like, that would have been one of the most aggressive and shrewd, Hall of Fame worthy type moves had it been pulled off by GM Ryan Poles. So reportedly, what he was looking to do was double dip. He was trying to do a deal with Houston to allow the Texans to come up to number 1 to ensure that they get whatever quarterback that they desire. Because when you're sitting at 2, you just get whatever's left, essentially, between Stroud and Young, right? I mean, you can't go wrong to me, but I like one more than the other, and I assume the Texans do as well, right? There's a preference. You'll take whatever's left because both of these guys project as really good NFL quarterbacks, but there's a preference. We all have a preference. And so do the Texans. So the Bears are like, I know you want one of them more than the other, right? Come on, man. Stop playing. Somebody's going to take this pick. Why not have it be you? All right. There's precedence that's been set here. Okay. Coming from 1 to 2, right? Or coming from 2 to 1, right? We've seen a team do that. The Bears did it. Or I think the Bears did it from 3 to 2 to go up and get Mitchell Trubisky. But we've seen it done before, I believe, from 2 to 1 to get a quarterback. If not, let's make it happen. Let's set precedents here. All right. And the Texans mulled over it. They were thinking about it, but they knew we really don't want to give up what it's going to take, because even going from 2 to 1 is going to cost you. It's not free and it's not cheap, right? But the Bears were going to go from 1 to 2, right? Pick up a nice low haul there, right? Wouldn't have probably been as extravagant as what they got from the Panthers coming from 9 to 1, but they would have gotten a first round pick more likely than not next year, and probably like a 3rd or 4th round pick this year, right? You'll take that and stash it away and keep it pushing, right? Then they were going to take the number 2 pick, flip that to Carolina at 9, and be done with it. Damn, that would have been legendary. Okay. The things that stories and legends are made of, right? That's the thing you tell your kids. Like we talk about the Herschel Walker trade, like that goes down in trade infamy, right? he couldn't do it. He couldn't wait. The Texans were kind of dragging him along. He wasn't able to wait the process out. I don't blame him. You got to get what you can get when you can get it. And so he just made the deal with the Panthers. But I think the Panthers, you have to applaud them for doing what they did ultimately. Being aggressive, going up, getting the quarterback. And we've talked about how there are no young guns in the NFC. That's about to change. And look, we don't know, right, what's going to become of Jordan Love in Green Bay. We don't know what's going to become of Trey Lance in San Francisco. We don't know what's going to become of the 2022 quarterbacks that are getting an opportunity, one in Atlanta and Desmond Ridder, one in Washington in Sam Howell. We don't know what's going to become of those young quarterbacks, right? But right now, it's just Jalen Hurts. If we're talking young quarterbacks in the NFC, there's just one. And no one else has established themselves as a legitimate threat. I think that's about to change here with the first pick in the draft and the Carolina Panthers selecting either C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. That said, let's start with C.J. Stroud, who I think eventually is going to be the number one overall pick in this draft. I don't think he's the best quarterback in this draft class. Let me be clear about that. I think the best quarterback is Bryce Young. However, C.J. Stroud has shown me some things over the last 2 months, going all the way back to the playoff game against Georgia, that I think has rewired my brain, and I think a lot of other people's brains as well, because if you look at the body of work that C.J. Stroud put forth before that playoff game against the Georgia Bulldogs that they should have won, I think there was this consensus that, hey, C.J. Stroud is cool. He's got some athleticism, but he doesn't show it. He doesn't like to run. He's not an off-script guy. When you protect him, everything's clean. He'll dissect you, pinpoint accurate. But when things start to break down and he's got to make something happen, that's when he's a little bit uncomfortable, right? That's when the mistakes start to happen. That's when you start to see inaccuracies, when he's got to throw off platform. The Georgia game changed everything, because that's the game where you started to see the athleticism. That's the game you started to see the off-platform throws, the escapability, the ability to extend a play to make a play. You saw C.J. Stroud, the playmaker. We hadn't seen that guy at Ohio State. We saw C.J. Stroud, the distributor. So for the first time, we got a glimpse into what C.J. Stroud could potentially be at his apex as a quarterback. And it was enlightening. And you're like, whoa, okay. I think I wish they would have won, so we could have seen, would that have translated and transferred over to a national championship game? They would have smoked TCU and they would have won a national championship, but that's nor here nor there. The sample size was small, however. So you've got to base how you feel about C.J. Stroud off of that. Now, what he did at the Combine, I told you, I've been watching the Combine for a decade now. All right, a little bit over a decade. And what I saw from him was one of the best quarterback performances at a Combine I've ever seen. Now, again, it's a Combine. Like, let's take it with a grain of salt. Don't want to overreact to that. But, we always talk about throwing the guys that aren't yours, having the timing and rhythm be slightly off. You're always checking for little things, footwork, mechanics, hip torque, where's the weight coming from, back foot, front foot, how comfortable does a guy look? All of that stuff, your elbow, mechanic, all of that stuff, that's the stuff you're critiquing at the Combine, because they've had time to prepare. It's like a test, right? They've had time to prepare. Now let's see how they do with the test. To me, the ultimate test, though, is the pro day, because I gave you essentially a cheat sheet, right? You're putting together whatever workout you're going to do at the pro day. You're putting that together. You and whomever your quarterback's coach is, right? You're putting that together. So all the throws that these scouts and GMs and team presidents and coaches are going to see, you put this together. Roughly 60 to 70 throws. That's on you, right? So you know all the answers to the test. You just got to go out and perform now, right? And I think a lot of times we dismiss pro days and we act as if they don't matter. And, as long as you don't bomb it, you should be fine. And while that is true, there is enormous pressure at a pro day for all the reasons I just laid out. Like, this is your showcase, right? This is your floor. Do with it whatever you like, right? You're at your own gym, your own facility. You're throwing to your own guys. You've got your own script. This is all you, right? We're just coming to see what you have for us to see. So you can't mess this up. So there's an enormous pressure. But then there's no pressure. Now, let me explain. There's enormous pressure because, as I just mentioned, all of those things are right there, right? But there's nobody rushing at you. Yeah, there's a quarterback's coach running at you with his hands up. Oh, okay. There's no pressure. You're throwing against the air. So you should be clean. You should look like a polished NFL passer. You should look ready to go. That's the expectation. And so there is a lot of pressure because of that. While there is no pressure because there's no defensive lineman, there's no outside backer coming after you, there's no defensive end bearing down on you, there's still pressure. And you got to go out and perform and deliver. Because in this social media age that we live in, nobody's going to sit down and watch the entire pro day, right? I watch pretty much every throw, but most people aren't going to watch the entire pro day. You're just looking for little snippets, little cut-ups. Oh, he threw a 57-yard bomb, and they're gonna cut that up. They're gonna throw it on Twitter, right? And you're gonna see that. You go, man, he's slinging it. Can't miss that, right? Can't miss that throw. Got to hit that one because everybody's hitting it. We've seen that for years. The rollout. Justin Fields had a crazy one. He rolls out, throws across his body like 65 yards in the air, drops a dime in there. Zach Wilson did the same exact thing. Like, that's the new thing. Just some creative, crazy throw off platform, accurate down the field. All right. So we can go, oh, ooh, ah, right? At the end of the day, just don't mess it up. As long as you do that, you should be fine. With CJ Stroud, there's been this steady continuation of just confirming what we already knew about him. He's a professional quarterback. The accuracy, the pocket presence, the ability to put the ball where you want it, when you want it, to be there, it's uncanny, right? Not quite sure about his ability to extend consistently. That's, I think, the thing that you can't see at a pro day, which is why a pro day doesn't really do much for CJ Stroud other than confirm what we already saw at the combine and what we saw throughout his Ohio State career. God, this guy is accurate. Man, this guy is impressive. You just got to see it up close and personal. That was an awesome pro day workout from CJ Stroud. It was clean. It was just like the combine workout, but cleaner because it was scripted and he was throwing to his own guys. Everything that you're looking for in an NFL quarterback, CJ Stroud has. Size, arm talent, accuracy, athleticism, escapability. The only issue with CJ Stroud right now is that the ceiling may not be as high as some of the other guys because we didn't see the off script of, nature of his game until the final game of his collegiate career. We don't know if that's actually something that's baked into his game or if that was just something out of sheer necessity because of the magnitude of the game he was playing in, that he knew he had to pull out all the stops. Am I going to get that in a week 2 game on the road at Cleveland? Or am I only going to get that in week 18, got to have it, division on the line, playoff berth on the line, and now I got to have it? Am I going to get that in the second quarter of a week 7 game where he's going to escape the pocket and make something happen? Or am I only going to get that in the fourth quarter on a game-winning drive? That's what we don't know about CJ Stroud. Is he going to sit there and take the sack? Is he going to try to force a ball because he's uncomfortable? Or is he going to escape the pocket and make something happen? You can't see that at a pro day. What we saw at the pro day was a continuation of what we've seen. This guy is cerebral with the football, pinpoint accuracy. He's tall. He's got pocket presence. Again, everything you're looking for, which is why I don't think the Carolina Panthers are going to be able to turn it down. Now, I will say this. Todd McShay says he has it on authority from a source that he trusts that hasn't led him astray yet, that the Carolina Panthers are taking Bryce Young. It's a done deal. That's who I would take. But if you look at Frank Reich's history and his track record working with quarterbacks, going all the way back to Carson Wentz, he likes them big, pause, and he likes them athletic. And I think the size is going to be an issue. And even though he's already come out and said size is not an issue, it's been all tall quarterbacks for the most part. It's been Carson Wentz. It's been Andrew Luck. I mean, these are the guys that he's been comfortable with throughout his career. Phillip Rivers. Anyway, we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. I think it's going to be C.J. Stroud. I think it's going to be, he is a quarterback that comes in clear packaging. You know what you're getting. You can see right through. It's transparent. You can see exactly what you're getting. And there's a comfort level in knowing, hey, here's what I'm going to get at quarterback, the most important position in all of football. Stroud is going to be a good quarterback in this league. The question is, can he be great? The difference between being good and great lies somewhere in the ability to extend off script. A lot of guys can throw the football. A lot of guys can spin it in this league. Kirk Cousins can spin it. Derek Carr can spin it. What's the difference between those guys and getting into the upper echelon, the Patrick Mahomes, the Aaron Rodgers? Tom Brady is a unicorn essentially because he was one of the few guys that didn't create off script. He did all his damage right from the pocket. But when we're talking about today's NFL, when we're talking about this generation of quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and now Jalen Hurts potentially, you look at the ability to create off script. You look at the damage that is done when things break down. Kirk Cousins will kill you when everything is perfect. Derek Carr can dice you when the protection is right and the route combination works and they've got the perfect coverage and the look that you're looking for against, this is the exact route concept you're looking for against this coverage and that look. He'll dissect you. It's when that doesn't go the way it was planned. You're expecting cover 3. You got something else. Uh-oh. A little bit of pressure from your right side. Uh-oh. What happens then? That takes you from really good to elite. Josh Allen, another guy, right? Make something happen when nothing's there. That's the question on C.J. Stroud. I think that's why the ceiling isn't as high on him. We'll see. I think he's going to go number 1 overall. Despite what Todd McShay says, I think he's going to go number 1. That was on Wednesday. Thursday, we got Bryce Young, Alabama. The conversation surrounding Bryce Young is hype. That's it. 5'10". We know what it is. We could see it watching him every Saturday. This guy looked small, okay? He looked tiny. I didn't see a lot of batted balls. I didn't see a guy that was fazed by being undersized. I saw a guy that figured out how to adapt and adjust to not being 6'3" or 6'4". He's one of those guys that gives me the impression of, if it's not a problem for you, it's definitely not one for me. If you're not tripping about it, I'm definitely not tripping about it. I mean, he's been 5'10" probably since he was 14. He's used to it, right? At this point of his life. And he's been throwing the football. And I said this pro day was going to be big for him because he didn't throw. He didn't go out and compete with everyone else at the combine. And whether that was intentional or he was still nursing his injury, because I believe he had surgery in the offseason, whatever the case may be, he just wanted to wait to his pro day. And that's fine. Everyone's entitled to do whatever they feel like is in their best interest. I said, but you just better come out and you better spin that bitch. Okay? Because your counterparts already did. And he put on a show, did Bryce Young. He looked the part. He looked like the Bryce Young we saw for the last, 2.5 years or so at Alabama. He looked like the guy that I said he looks like the number 1 overall pick in the draft whenever his time comes. And he made some off-platform throws, a couple of deep balls that were dropped, coincidentally enough, but they were right there, right? Extremely accurate. High release point. It's funny because we talk about size so much, size, and we could get lost in the size conversation. But what is interesting is Justin Herbert is 6'5", 6'6". But I don't know if anybody gets more balls batted down in the league because he's throwing from 3 quarters quite often. Size only matters if you make it an advantage or disadvantage. If Bryce Young wasn't maximizing his throws in terms of throwing over the top, we could have a real issue. Bryce Young's delivery is quick, it's compact, and it's over the top. Okay? Like Drew Brees. And these guys, they adapt to throwing the ball. Drew Brees used to get on his tippy toes. Like, you do what you have to do to be successful. Young has already made the adjustment by throwing over the top. So I don't worry about him. I've seen the off-schedule, off-script plays. I love the fact that in his final year, and I know some people ding players for this. Sam Howell got dinged for this. In his final year, he had to turn into a playmaker because all of his stuff left. All of his guys went to the NFL. Both of his running backs, both of his receivers. His offensive line was shuffled. He got dinged for that. Josh Allen got dinged for, his best receiver, which was his tight end, going to the NFL, and Jacob Hollister. His running back going to the NFL. His offensive line being shuffled around. He got dinged for that in his final year at Wyoming. Same thing happened to Jordan Love at Utah State. A lot of guys left, offensive line shuffled around, new offensive coordinator. He did not play the same that he did the year before, and he got dinged for that. Bryce Young did not have a great supporting cast his final year in Tuscaloosa. It was one of the worst that I've seen, specifically at the wide receiver position. It was one of the worst that I've seen in quite some time. One thing we know Alabama produces, much like Ohio State, is top-tier NFL talent at the receiver position. That is not what I saw for much of the year in 2022 from the Alabama Crimson Tide. He probably had more trust in his tight end, Cameron Latu, and his running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, than he did any of those wide receivers. And that's a far cry from the Amari Coopers and the Jerry Judys and the list goes on and on of these guys that we've seen come into the league out of Alabama over and over again. Henry Ruggs. I mean, it seemed like there was just this constant, barrage of receivers coming from Bama and Ohio State. That wasn't the case last year. He had to make things happen. My favorite Bryce Young game, obviously my favorite CJ Stroud game, is the last game against Georgia, right? My favorite Bryce Young game on the road at Texas in Austin early in the season. They should have lost that game. Okay. And you could see that Alabama, for the first time in a very long time, they were overwhelmed on the road in a hostile environment. Texas was out for blood that day. And the guy across the sideline knew Nick Saban all too well because he had just come from Nick Saban's coaching staff the year prior. It's like he was in Nick Saban's playbook. He knew every move. And if not for like two of their quarterbacks going down in that game, I assure you they beat Alabama that day. And they still had a chance to win. And Bryce Young said, no, not on my watch. And that final drive is all you really need to see. If you're looking for the guy with the it factor, it's Bryce Young for me. And we've seen that throughout his career at Alabama, making things happen off script. Finding a guy when it seems like the play is done, it's bleak, and you probably should just get rid of it and live to fight another day. He somehow finds a way to find a guy. More athletic than you give him credit for. Much like Stroud, he doesn't want to run. He'd much rather stay in the pocket and destroy you. But unlike Stroud, he was willing to move and make things happen off script when needed. And you got to see it on a consistent basis so you know that it exists. You know he can throw from multiple platforms. You know he can elude pressure, escape, extend to throw, extend to run. You know he can do all of these things because he did it consistently, especially in 2022. That's why, for me, Bryce Young, I thought he was more battle-tested. And it's easy to say that he played in the SEC, greater competition. You played against Georgia multiple times. Yeah, we saw all of that. Don't see that in Ohio State. Yeah, they play against Michigan once a year. You know, whoop did he do? But the rest of the Big Ten, yeah, it's okay. Penn State's okay, right? Iowa's okay. You know, some of these other teams, they're okay. Illinois is okay. But Michigan State's, they're okay, right? But they're not Ole Miss, you know. They're not Mississippi State. They're not Texas A&M. They're not Auburn. They're not LSU, right? So to see him do what he did the last couple of years and to see him play at the level that he did and do the things that he did, I was impressed with him coming out and just kind of calming down, you know, quieting the noise, because there's a lot of talk about his size, and just going out and throwing the football extremely well. And something else that he did at his pro day that, you know, garnered a little bit of attention was that he showed ownership of his pro day. Most guys, they let their quarterbacks coach run the show, right? Where that guy has scripted how many passes you're going to throw and what sequence you're going to throw them. He's telling the receivers, hey, this is what you're going to do here. This is what you're going to do here. Bryce Young got his guys together, and he's looking at the sheet, and he's telling each guy, hey, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to. So he took ownership of his pro day, showing that leadership that teams want to see. I think he's a natural-born leader. We saw that at Alabama. Is his size an issue from a health standpoint? Maybe. Now, that I can't dispute. He did have some injuries at Alabama. He wasn't Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, but he did get banged up a little bit. So there is that. That is something to consider. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for all the components that make up an elite NFL quarterback, Bryce Young has it. The only thing he's lacking is size. And if you can get past that, then you can find yourself potentially a home run pick in this draft at quarterback. I thought his pro day was phenomenal. I thought he showed the ability to stand tall, throw the football. Again, he doesn't have to show the things that C.J. Stroud has to show, right? C.J. Stroud can't show you that he can throw from, you know, off script. I mean, everything's scripted at a pro day. Bryce Young doesn't have to do that because he's shown the ability to do that. I think more so than anything else, people just want to see, can he spin it? Does he have enough arm talent to get the football where it needs to go? And I thought he showed that. Showed accuracy, he showed timing and rhythm, and then he showed arm strength. So I think he's made his case for the number one overall pick in the draft. I still think it's going to be C.J. Stroud, who also has made a very compelling case for number one overall pick in this year's draft. And then there's the guy that had his pro day today, Kentucky quarterback Will Levis, who I don't think is in the running to be the number one overall pick. I don't think he's in the running to be the number two overall pick, but I do think he is in the driver's seat to be the third overall quarterback taken in this year's draft class. Now, that is not a slam dunk. It is not a guarantee, but I do think that right now he is in the driver's seat. And I thought that today's pro day did nothing to remove him from the driver's seat as the third quarterback in this year's draft. If you're talking about raw ability in this year's draft, I know Anthony Richardson is as tantalizing as it gets, but Will Levis is right there. Obviously, the athleticism that Anthony Richardson has is on another level, and Levis just isn't that. But at 6'4", 200 and probably 23 pounds, really good athlete. Will Levis is probably running a 4.6 something. He may have the most live arm in this year's draft. From a raw physical gift and skill set perspective, Will Levis is very intriguing. And I get it. Anthony Richardson brings a lot to the table. But Will Levis is right there. And I'd contend he's got the strongest arm in this year's draft class. A lot of people want to compare him to Josh Allen. I don't think he's Josh Allen. As a matter of fact, he's not Josh Allen. I was a big Josh Allen guy in that 2018 draft class. I don't think he's Josh Allen, but he's got a similar skill set to that of Josh Allen. A lot less polished. And I know Allen's big, critique coming out was accuracy, which I didn't think was a big deal because I saw him be accurate before all of the changes. But Levis, I thought actually threw the ball well. And I remember I told you guys I came away from the combine impressed with Will Levis, even though I didn't think he was as consistent, which is my biggest knock on him and Anthony Richardson and some of the other quarterbacks in this year's draft class that are very talented. They're not as consistent. Their misses are big misses, and they're more frequently, coming to fruition. However, I thought that he showed everyone in attendance what they could be getting if they select him. Yeah, I need a little work. If you're Will Levis, you're telling them, yeah, I need a little bit of work. But from a talent perspective, these other guys can't hold a candle to me. They don't have the physical gifts that I have. They don't have the arm talent that I have. And I'm a better athlete than they are. From a package perspective, I'm as good as it gets in the draft. That's what Will Levis is selling as a package. Athleticism, arm talent, physical gifts, size, all of that stuff. I am the best package you're going to get in this draft. Richardson has something to say about that, but Will Levis is telling everybody, you got to wait on that kid, right? You got to bring him along. I'm more ready than he is. Some would debate that. Some will argue that. Hell, I would argue that. He's further along than Anthony Richardson, in my opinion. Absolutely. But he's still not ready to play week 1. Not like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are. However, that could change. Get him in the right system. Someone that's willing to adapt their play calling to whatever makes Will Levis comfortable. He could probably be ready week 1. I still don't think that would be the case. But for me, Will Levis and what he showed at his pro day was the ability to throw the football accurately, more accurately than he did at the combine, because I thought he was a little, skittish at the combine. He showed the ability to throw the football more accurately. I thought he showed a little bit more touch. All right, which I was surprised because I actually saw a little bit of touch at the combine. I saw a little bit more of it at his pro day. And I think he went out of his way to show them that he had some touch. And then, as guys with big arms like to do, they like to show it off. and he had a couple of flick of the wrist type throws that only the guys with special arm talent can do. And so I thought he did a good job of putting his best foot forward, throwing his name in the hat to be the number 1 overall pick. He doesn't have enough lottery balls in that discussion, right? In that drawing. He's not going to be number 1. And frankly, I don't think he's going to be number 2 either. But I do think when it's all said and done, he'll be the 3rd quarterback selected in this year's draft. Now, again, Anthony Richardson, very tantalizing from a talent perspective, and we'll see him next week. But the tape is ultimately the differentiator. What you see at the combine, what you see at the pro days, that's all confirmation. If you're on the fence and you finally get to see him throw it live and he blows you away, maybe that's the difference, right? But the tape don't lie. That's ultimately what's going to get you drafted 1, 2, or 4 in the case of Will Levis. And there's enough good tape to get him drafted, but there's enough bad tape that ensures he won't be the 1st or 2nd quarterback taken in this year's draft. So I think what he effectively did at his pro day was he showed that, hey, I belong. I belong in this group of quarterbacks. My name should be mentioned with C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. We'll see. I question Will Levis as a natural leader. We'll see. I question consistency with him. He's definitely got the athletic arrogance that is required of the quarterback position, really any position in any sport for that matter. When you play at the highest level, you are required to have athletic arrogance. I think his might go a little bit further, though. That makes it teeter on the verge of, shall I say, Zach Wilson territory, where you start to feel like your doo-doo don't stink. That's when you get into a different category and things get uncomfortable and you start going down the wrong road. And I see a little bit of that in him, just listening to him talk. But there's nothing wrong with being confident in your abilities and what you can bring to the table. And you have to sell yourself. If you won't sell yourself, then who will, right? You don't believe in you, who else will? So I like Will Levis. I don't love Will Levis. I love the 2 at the top of this year's draft. I don't love Will Levis, but I like him. And we'll see where he lands is ultimately going to determine, as I talk about all the time, especially with quarterbacks, more so than any other position, but that goes for any position, but specifically quarterback. Fit is everything. Fit is everything. You get to the right team with the right staff that understands what you're capable of, and they cultivate a offense around your skill set. It changes everything. Lamar Jackson doesn't go to the Baltimore Ravens, but instead goes to a team that decides you got to fit into our offensive scheme, and they don't build an offense totally around his skill set. Is Lamar Jackson right now? Probably not. Tom Brady doesn't go to New England and have an offense that's crafted to his skill set. Is he Tom Brady? Is Bill Belichick? Probably not. Tom Brady goes to Cleveland. He's probably not Tom Brady. So where these guys end up and who's coaching them will make a huge difference. And I think it makes more of a difference when you're a guy like Will Levis and Anthony Richardson than it does C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. So we'll ultimately see what happens with these guys. But I thought it was a really good week of pro days. Everybody did what they were supposed to do to cement their claim as the best quarterback in this draft. Now we wait on Anthony Richardson to complete the cipher next week. And then you pretty much have all of the, evidence that you need to make a case once we get Anthony Richardson's pro day next week. So that's how I feel about what I saw this week. That's how I feel about these quarterbacks. Should be interesting. We haven't had this kind of intrigue at the top of the draft in quite some time, because generally we know who's going number one. And as we get closer to the draft, maybe the beans rather will be spilled, and we'll know exactly where the Panthers are going. And usually, because of the day and age we live in, where nothing is kept quiet, we'll probably find out a day or two before the draft what Carolina's leaning towards doing. Somebody will, blurt it out. But right now, nobody really knows. I contend it's CJ Stroud. I told you that Todd McShay says he's got it on authority that it's Bryce Young, and it's definitely Bryce Young. We'll see. To me, you can't go wrong. I mean, both of them are going to be really good. I think the ceiling on one is a little bit higher than the other. One is as transparent as it gets. And so there's a comfort in transparency, knowing what you're going to get. I think it's going to be hard to pass up CJ Stroud with the track record that Frank Reich has with, bigger quarterbacks, and just seeing how he carries himself and what he's about. I think it's going to be tough to pass him up. I'm a Bryce Young guy, though, myself. So anyway, I digress. I'm going to get to the comment section really fast and see what you guys have to say. Y'all know how this works. For those of you who do not, it's very simple. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. We'll get to as many of those as we can. I cannot guarantee you that we will get to all of them, but we will get to as many as we can. But if you want to jump to the front of the line, ensure that your comment is read. Super chats are the way to do that. And so, with that said, I do have a super chat, so I'll get to that one first. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Snyder selling makes this an A+ offseason. When I gave out the instructions for that, I didn't want to include that. We already know that that's the biggest thing of the offseason. I was separating that. That doesn't factor into what we have done this offseason, because that's a separate issue. Snyder selling by itself makes the offseason an A+, but that's not what's going to ultimately win us games on the football field. What's ultimately going to win us games are the staff and the guys on the field that they've acquired and the guys that are already here. So that's what I wanted to focus on. And I made sure that I made it abundantly clear that we're not factoring in Snyder selling the franchise, because clearly that's all we really care about as fans. Like, they could have done nothing this offseason and Snyder sell the franchise, and we still are in the streets dancing, right? So I really wanted to keep it separate. That was the goal. Niners fan writes, all these QBs look damn good. Is this class better than 2018? I mean, I think the class you should be looking at now is 2020, because 2018 really fell flat on its face when it's all said and done. Darnold didn't turn out to be any good. Mayfield is trying to resurrect his career. Rosen was a complete bust, and all you have left standing from 2018 is Allen and Jackson. So 18 isn't a good comp. The comp is 2020 with Herbert and Burrow, Tua, and now Jalen Hurts. 2020 is the comp. That's the class right now that's starting to live up to the billing, whereas 18, not so much. After, we've had enough time now to see 18 and what it's materialized into, and only 2 of the 5 guys that were drafted in the first round have turned into anything. All 3 of the guys that went in the first round in 2020 are really good. 2 of them there are no doubts about. And Tua, if he can stay healthy, after what we saw last year, we feel better about him. I was always a Tua guy in terms of feeling like he was going to be something. And finally, as I just told you, coaching matters. Where you're fit matters. Mike McDaniel has turned Tua into exactly what the Dolphins drafted him to be. He's just got to stay healthy now, which has always been a problem going back to Bama. And then Jalen Hurts, as a second-round pick, has turned into a budding superstar at the quarterback position. So the 2020 draft is probably the more apt comp. And is this that draft? I don't know. I can tell you this. With Burrow and Herbert being the 1 and 1, 1A, 1B of that draft, I think this is comparable to that. Now, Burrow, to me, was the best quarterback I've ever evaluated in the 11 years I've been doing this. Better than Andrew Luck, better than Trevor Lawrence, it's Joe Burrow. That's number one. These guys aren't that. Okay. But they're going to come in and be really good quarterbacks. So I think the class that I'm looking at is 2020. Can this class be 2020? Because you're going to see 4 quarterbacks go in the first round. We'll see. 2021 is already looking a little suspect. We were talking about that draft class. 5 quarterbacks went in the first round. Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Jones, Fields. Right now, the jury's still out on Lance, Jones, and Fields, even though I think Fields is kind of pushing towards that, we've accepted him. I still think he's got to prove it as a passer. The athleticism, he's already checked that box. The playmaker, he's already checked that box. Now they've gotten him weapons. No excuses in the passing department. He has to be better this year. But he's leaning towards, Trevor Lawrence, who's the only guy that's in the clear right now. As, he's made it. We've accepted him as a young star at the quarterback position. Zach Wilson's a bust already until proven otherwise. And Mac Jones started off with a bang, fizzled a bit. And I think that's more to do. And I told you coaching matters. I guarantee you, if Josh McDaniels were still in New England, Mac Jones would have followed up his rookie campaign with an even better sophomore season. But that shit they had going on, we talked about it all season. This shit they had going on with Joe Judge and the bearded one, Matt Patricia. Again, 2 guys that have never been offensive play callers in their lives. One was a defensive coordinator when he became a head coach. The other was a special teams coordinator that became a head coach. That shit they were doing last year was so dysfunctional that you could see that was going to turn into a mess. And it did. That affected Mac Jones. And he was injured last year, but it was a mess. If they can, and they brought in Bill O'Brien, that's going to give him stability again. Mac Jones is going to be just fine. All right. They brought in a real offensive coordinator. All right. With chops. So I think Mac Jones is similar to Justin Fields. He's moving towards the Trevor Lawrence territory. Wilson and Lance are the 2 where you're looking at it and you're saying, all right, time to start making a move. Lance, obviously, injuries. What can you do? But he's going to have to show improve because Brock Purdy is there. And after what he did last year, now you got somebody nipping at your heels. And Zach Wilson, he just stinks right now. And if he's going to be good, it's going to be somewhere else other than New York. I highly doubt that he'll be the guy in New York for the Jets. But we'll see what happens. Derek B writes, on the Hurts QB scrum, I saw your message. He says, why not have your DN crash down on the tight end and have the corner or safety crash down hard and cut A.J. Brown or Hurts at the knees? Make them think twice. Here's the thing. You can only get away with that once. First of all, I don't know if that would be a penalty or not. Probably not. But you can only get away with that one time before the Eagles or whatever team makes the adjustment. You think they're going to allow you to continue to do that? To come in and crash and then have another guy come in and cut? They're going to make the adjustment. They're going to put a guy over there, put a guy on the other side, right? Because at the end of the day, all they need are inches. So they can have, whomever line up like right behind him and make it even more apparent what they're trying to do. Because remember, off of that, they had like the little pitch to the perimeter, to the tight end and all that stuff. So they want to keep that stuff alive to kind of keep you honest. And if you go too aggressive, they may do that. There are things you can do off of that. If you sell out and overcommit, he can act like he's going in for the sneak and take one step backwards and just throw a loft job. If you're selling out like that, you give up a touchdown. You're so busy trying to stop a play that's almost 100% certainty to get it, and you could give up a 61-yard touchdown pass trying to be over aggressive to stop inches from being gained. There's things that they can do to offset that. So I think you can only do it once before they say, oh, that's how you want to play it? Okay, we got something for that. Red Wings 01 writes, I don't know if you've heard about the whole Diami trade rumor. I guess you'll save that for the CP. But my 2 cents is I'm not a fan of the move. Give him a year to see what he can do with Sam. I haven't actually heard any rumors. But this is the time. It's Lion season. Okay. This is the time of year that you would hear something like that. There's nothing else to talk about other than the draft. And everybody's trying to conjure up things that are of interest. And so there's really nothing going on with Washington outside of Daniel Snyder selling the franchise. There's nothing juicy with this team right now. So, a Diami Brown trade rumor is spicy. So you throw that out there. I don't know if that's something they're looking to do. Diami's he was a 2020 draft pick. So 2020, 2021, 2022. So this is technically his last year on that rookie deal. So maybe they are entertaining trade ideas. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I have something. I'm going to save it for a show because I told myself I was going to talk to you guys about it. But you brought it up here. I'll just tell you that I was thinking about another receiver. He's gone now, so it doesn't matter. But I'll address all of that once I find out what this rumor is that you speak of. And I'll tie it all in together because I was eyeballing another receiver who was available, who has been traded. And I knew he was available because of the moves that team had made. And I was interested. And at one point, Washington was interested. But we'll talk about that on another show. Let's see. That might be the last comment that I have. Kevin, the PRF writes, Rodgers, what's the holdup? Prediction when the ransom is paid. Deadline spur action. I've been very adamant about that. And the Jets don't have to rush this process. They're not playing football. Last time I checked, they're not playing football next week or next month or the month after that. So they don't have to rush this process. What the Packers are asking for is asinine. Okay. The Jets are like, hey, come on, be reasonable. And the Packers are like, we don't have to. What choices do you have? Okay. What are you going to do? Go get Lamar Jackson? Yeah, right. You're stuck. You can't go get Jimmy Garoppolo. You can't go get Derek Carr. All of your cards have already been shown. And now you have to wait on us. So either you pay what we're asking for or you don't get Aaron Rodgers. And the Packers are posturing. They've already said, hey, we'll hold on to Aaron Rodgers if we have to. No, you're not. No, you're not. Like, Jordan, nobody wants Aaron Rodgers still there, and Jordan Love assuming that they're going to give him the keys, which I think is already done. Aaron Rodgers can't be there. So they're going to trade him. The Jets just have to wait them out. And at the end of the day, if the Jets are desperate enough, they'll give the Packers what they're asking for. But if the Jets are patient, the Packers will have to acquiesce. They'll have to say, okay, all right, let's compromise. All right. And which is what the Jets ultimately want. Just play the game of chicken. Someone's going to swerve. Okay. Who's swerving first is the question. The Jets get too antsy. They'll give up the one. If the Packers realize, all right, we're fighting a losing battle, they'll take the two and maybe 2 twos, maybe it's a 2 and a 3, and that 3 can turn into another 2. Like, they'll settle for whatever the package is. But if I'm the Jets, I'm not giving you a 1 for Aaron Rodgers. Sorry, not sorry. And I think that's what the holdup is. At one point, I heard 2 1s, which is ridiculous. And they may have thrown that out there first. But as I told you, in negotiations, you don't start with what you ultimately want. You throw out a ridiculous and frivolous number that makes the other side say, what? No way. And then they compromise, and then you start negotiating, right? That's what the 2 1s that I heard once upon a time. That's what that was. They probably want a 1, and the Jets are like, nah, I can't do that. And even if I'm the Jets and I am thinking about giving up a 1, okay, I'll give you my next year's 1. You're not getting this year's 1, though. I think the Jets do they have 2 of them this year? No, they just have 1. So yeah, I'm not giving you a 1 this year. I'll give you my 1 next year because I expect to be a playoff team with Aaron Rodgers in tow. So I don't know. We'll see. My prediction is it'll get done. The win is tough. If I had to guess, I'd say post-draft. Jets aren't doing anything at quarterback in the draft, right? They've already done that. Their owner's already spoken. They want a veteran. It's Aaron Rodgers. My guess is either draft night after the first round, because the Jets are like, I'll give you my 2. This last call for my 2 this year after day 1. And the Packers finally say, all right, you got me. Go ahead. Give me your 2 this year. Give me your 2 next year, and we'll call it even. So I say it's either draft night, day 1, going into day 2, or after the Jets make their first round pick, and that 13th pick is no longer on the table, or it's after the draft. My money's on draft night, ish. Day 1, day 2, before the Jets make that second round selection. Let's see. Todd Labor writes, hey, Louie, it's Todd. With all the signings in the offseason, especially with our offensive line, who should we draft, cornerback, safety, or quarterback? Well, you should be drafting all of them at some point. If you're talking about in the first round, Todd, the board is going to have to speak to you as far as what ultimately is going to be done. It's hard to project that stuff because you don't know what's going to happen in the draft. Again, you could get to 16 and 2 corners could still be left. You get to 16 and no corners could be left that you want of the big 3, Witherspoon, JPJ, and Gonzalez. You could be targeting Brian Branch all along, but say 16 is too high for him. I'd love to take him in the 20s and try to trade back and then take Brian Branch. Who's to say what they're looking to do? Cornerback is my guess. If I were a betting man, I'd tell you that corner would be the first selection, but the board might say otherwise. We could get to the draft and all the corners are gone and they're interested in a nickel at that point, and nothing, at 16 says, hey, this is good value at nickel. So you go in a different direction. What Ron has effectively done with all the moves, and he said he wanted to do this, and he's essentially done it, is he's put himself in a position to where if they have to make a pick at 16, they can take BPA. And whatever that looks like for them, we'll see. Whether that's a tight end, it's a running back, it's an edge rusher, it's an offensive lineman, it's a nickel, it's a corner, it could be anything. We'll see. My guess is right now is corner at 16. Specifically a boundary, because again, Juice hasn't stayed healthy. Fuller's on the last year of his deal, and So is Cam Dantzler. So after this season, you don't have a guy opposite of Benjamin St-Juste. So while everybody's like, hey, we need a nickel, yeah, if we're talking about for 2023, yeah, we do need a nickel. And there's plenty of them in the draft, and you don't have to draft that at 16. Boundary, and there's plenty of boundary corners in this draft, and you don't have to draft that guy at 16. And there's a number of names that are really starting to, garner attention at 16. One of them is the Mississippi State corner. So, like I said, corner for me is, I think, the pick at 16, but we'll see. 5G Trey writes, if Sam Howell wasn't on the roster, would you pick a quarterback in this draft? I think you would have to. You'd have to. I remember very vividly saying last year that the selection of Sam Howell put you in a position that if Carson Wentz didn't work out, I remember saying this multiple times, it put you in a position to where you wouldn't have to be in the QB fray next year. You'd have a guy. And that's essentially what has worked out, what panned out. Carson Wentz ended up not working out. Sam Howell got the final start of the season. He was impressive. They were impressed with him all year long as a practice player, his demeanor, how he carried himself, and now he's going to get an opportunity. If he wasn't, I think you would have to do something at quarterback this year. I mean, what were you going to do? Go into the season with Jacoby Brissett as your starter? Yeah, right. I mean, they might have been more aggressive in the quarterback market too, right? There may have been, they might have went out and got Jimmy Garoppolo. They may have gotten Derek Carr. They would have went after somebody. We wouldn't be sitting here talking about, Jacoby Brissett. We would have been talking about a more high-profile quarterback that would have been the starter. And then you would have been looking at a guy like Hendon Hooker, someone like that. I don't think we would have been trading up in the draft, though. Red Wings says he's got 2 years left. I'm assuming you're talking about Diami. So he was 2021 then. I think I put him in the wrong draft. He was with Benjamin St-Juste. They both were third round picks in 2021. Correct. Yeah. So he's got 2 years left on his deal. I feel like it's a little early to be. If he had 1 year left, yeah, okay, I get it. He's got 2 years left. We saw the explosion in the Tennessee game. Now he's coupled with this guy. Let's just see what he has. Ultimately, it may be nothing. Maybe it's something. Maybe there is a real rapport there. Ultimately, I don't think Diami's going anywhere. I don't think he's going anywhere. Gregory Lightbody writes, why do we feel so confident in Howell? It was only one game against Cowboys backup secondary. First of all, it wasn't the Cowboys backup secondary. That was the Cowboys secondary, period. They were in shambles by the time we saw them, but it doesn't matter who was out there. You still got to make the plays, right? I mean, that doesn't change anything. Anytime I see you on a football field, you need to put your best foot forward, whether it's preseason, whether it's mop-up duty in the fourth quarter of a blowout, or you get to start in a meaningless Week 18 game. Cowboys were playing for a chance to win the division. So don't make it seem as if he was playing against the Cowboys JV squad with the Cowboys having nothing to play for. The Cowboys were playing for the division. The Eagles had lost 2 games in a row. They had no idea what was going on in that Eagles-Giants game. All they knew is that they needed to take care of business against Washington to give themselves a chance to potentially host a playoff game and get the number 1 seed overall in the conference. So don't dismiss that. I don't know if they could have gotten the number 1 seed, though. 49ers might have gotten the number 1 seed. I digress. I don't remember what the standings were. I just know they could have beaten out the Eagles. So don't try to, demean that start. and try to make it seem as if it was insignificant, because it was significant. And yeah, it was one start. Absolutely. It was one. It's a small sample size. I'm not basing my excitement, and it's more than just excitement for me. I don't make campaigns based on excitement. I was excited about Taylor Heineke. I didn't make a campaign based off of Taylor Heineke's success early in his first 3 out of 4 starts were fantastic for Taylor Heineke. But I knew there was a ceiling there. I was excited, but I wasn't gung-ho on Taylor Heineke. You know why? Because there was a body of work that preceded Taylor Heineke. There's a body of work that precedes Sam Howell. All I can go off of is what I've seen. I watched Sam Howell at the University of North Carolina. He played really, really well. So much so that at one point he was considered the best quarterback in college football. That didn't just come out of nowhere. He was a good football player. And I'll take it a step further. You know what? I'm gonna cut it off right there because I got more to say about that, but I'll do that at another time. Gregory Lightbody also writes, what is the first thing you want the new owner to do? I want the new owner, the first thing that I really care about, this isn't the first thing he's going to do. The first thing that I truly care about is the new stadium. That's the first thing that I truly care about. A lot of people are like, I want him to change the name, this, that. I don't give a shit about any of that. If we stay the Commanders, I'm fine with that. I don't care. If he changes it to something else, cool, whatever. I don't care about any of that stuff. You guys know how I feel about that. All right, Commanders is fine by me. I just didn't want to be the football team. So if we're the Commanders moving forward, okay, cool. I want a new stadium. I want it in DC where it belongs. And I want it to be state of the art. I want it to have a retractable roof so that they can host the Super Bowl. I want all of that stuff. First, we got to find a location so we can break some ground before we can start talking about, the specifics of it and what it's going to look like and this, that, and the third. Where the hell are you building it? Can we get it where it belongs? Back in the city. That's the first thing I want the owner to do. Cool Colors. Hashtag cool writes, the Packers are going to be at a loss in the end because most teams are settled on their QB plans. The longer they wait, the more they will lose. That's why if I'm the Jets, I wait them out. Again, you just play this game a poker. You play this game of chicken. Let's have a staring contest. Who's going to blink first? Everybody's already got a seat. In this game of quarterback musical chairs, everybody's already pulled up a seat. It's just them and the Jets. And the Jets are like, yeah, it ain't no more seats left except the Aaron Rodgers one. But guess what? You ain't got nobody else to pass them to either. You can't pit us against somebody else to drive up the price. And you don't want him on your roster come week 1, even though you said you're cool with that. No, you're not. You're not cool with Jordan Love looking over his shoulder. Trey Lance even said he wasn't cool with Jimmy Garoppolo being back last year. No young quarterback wants to look over his shoulder and see a guy that was leading the team just a couple of years ago, a few years ago to the NFC Championship game and 2 years ago to the divisional round and the best record in the conference. Nobody wants to look over their shoulder and see that shit. In the case of Trey Lance, he didn't want to look over his shoulder and see the guy that led them to the NFC Championship game the year prior. They got to move on from him. Jets know that. Packers know that deep down inside. Kevin, the PRF, writes, will the Packers shop for another buyer to pair their price Falcons? No, because nobody else is really interested. Because, again, most teams aren't going to flat out tell you that we're a veteran quarterback away. The Falcons aren't an Aaron Rodgers away. Keep in mind, Aaron Rodgers is damn near 40 years old. You're only going out to get Aaron Rodgers if you think you can win a Super Bowl this year or next year. The Falcons clearly are not in a position to win a Super Bowl this year or next year. So that doesn't make any sense for them whatsoever. Most teams are looking to go young, which is the right thing to do. And if you think you're close to something, then a guy like Aaron Rodgers makes sense. But who else is in that market? Saints went out and got Derek Carr. Buccaneers said, we'll just settle on Bake. That market is dried up for the teams that could have maybe made a power play for Aaron Rodgers. That's done. That market's dried up. It's just the Jets. That's it. Joe Rockhead writes, what's up, Lou? My government name is Hal, so I'm getting that merch just because. Okay, that's dope. That's real dope. Speaking of whom, I watched this footage again. That arm is bionic. Again, there's so many, aspects to his game that are likable. And so, for me, I just feel like there are a lot of things that lend itself to him being successful, but we're going to see. We're going to see what happens ultimately. So, Terry Maples writes, Hendon Hooker is a guy you can trust to work his ass off on the field and in the QB room as well. Leading by example is what this team needs. Accuracy and running ability ices the cake. I like Hendon Hooker a lot. And I think he's going to be a second-round pick. I've already stressed this. I said he's got Jalen Hurts written all over him. And there's no better year to come out in a draft than this year if people are comping you to Jalen Hurts. It can only help. So, yeah. Andy Lockhart writes, love the Howl hat, bro. Do you guys ship to UK? I got your tweet, man. And so I reached out to my distributor, and I should have tweeted this to you. And I meant to this morning, and I was supposed to do it. Then I got sidetracked, and I'm terrible with that. But I saw your tweet. I reached out to my distributor yesterday, and he told me he's going to update the site so that they can ship to the UK. So I was supposed to get back to you when he got back to me to tell me that it was done. But I'm going to tell you right now, yes, he's making the necessary adjustments to the site to allow that to be the case. So yes, they are going to be able to ship to the UK. Thank you for inquiring, and I appreciate you, Andy. Let's see. Gregory Lightbody writes, only owner that I know can give us a great stadium is Bezos. Harris is completely broke compared to him. That's why he's getting other guys involved. That's why he's adding investors to the group to put them in a position. And again, Snyder was going to have to fund the stadium. I don't know what happened there, but I think you're going to get some funding from DC if they decide to do that. I still don't think they're going to get it in DC ultimately. They don't want a stadium there. The constituents of DC don't want a stadium there. So I still think it's going to have to be built somewhere else. But ultimately, that's why you add investors. And if nobody would work with Snyder, and rightfully so. So he was going to have to finance it himself, which he couldn't afford. New ownership should be able to get wherever he's going to build the stadium to help finance the stadium. So I don't think it'll be that big of an issue, but we'll see. My guy, John Livingston, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JL Smooth, writes, what's good, Lou? What's good, JL Smooth? He says, what do you think of the comparisons of Levis to Allen? I know the kid has a great arm, cannon level even. I talked about that earlier in the show. That's the comparison. I don't think it's an apt comparison because Allen had already established his escapability, off play, off script, playmaking ability, way back at Wyoming. Will Levis hasn't really established the ability to make a ton of things happen off schedule, off script. I think the physical gifts are what people are tying to Allen. Allen was 6'5", though, or Allen is 6'5". Will Levis is 6'3". On a great day, maybe 6'4", but he's 6'3". He's not Josh Allen. His arm is comparable to that of Allen, but Allen's a better athlete, if you ask me. Allen's got better playmaking ability when things break down. I don't think the two are comparable in that regard. I do think some of the issues with accuracy that people were worried about with Allen, those issues exist with Levis. And I think if you're looking for a way to feel better about Will Levis, you say, hey, he could be Josh Allen in 3 years. That's what you tell yourself. But do I think he's Josh Allen? No, I don't. And I said that at the top of the show. Vincent Coe, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Vincent Coe, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Likewise with my guy, JL Smooth, who writes, Seahawks coaches taking selfies with all three QBs, teasing fans, got me thinking they might draft one. But who do you really seeing lasting to the 5th pick? None of them. They're having fun. And all of this makes me think they're going to draft a quarterback, but I think it's Anthony Richardson. Like, to me, he fits the Seattle Seahawks mold, and he doesn't have to play anytime soon. You can't draft C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young and just put them on ice behind Geno Smith. No fan base is going for that shit, even though Geno Smith had a fantastic year last year. The first sign of trouble, get Bryce Young on the field. Get Geno's ass out of there. Get C.J. Stroud on the field. Get Geno's ass out of there. Like, that's not what they're looking for, right? You draft Anthony Richardson, Geno struggles. There's going to be some fans calling out for Anthony Richardson, but there won't be a crescendo. It won't be, everyone, standing in unison looking for it to happen. I think they're going to take a quarterback. It's going to be Anthony Richardson. This is just throwing. Look, they're at 5. They don't have to throw anybody off the scent. Okay. It's not like they're at 3 or 2 or 1. They're 5. 2 of those guys won't be there, and the likelihood is all 3 of them will be gone already. Now, if Seattle is feeling froggy and they want to leap, they could go to 3. I don't see the Seahawks doing that, though. I don't see them doing that. They didn't put themselves in this position to draft 5th overall and have 2 first-round picks to give one of them away. So we'll see. Vincent Cole, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if Jalen Carter falls to 16, you cool with Washington taking him? Nah. I've always been a proponent of taking a strength and making it stronger, but that's overkill. You just paid both of these boys. This team has done a great job of building up the equity and having good guys on the roster. And not to say that Jalen Carter isn't a good guy. I don't want to make that claim. And I don't want to have that one, decision change who he is as a person. I don't know him. And I've heard good things about him, actually. But I've also heard that he lacks work ethic. He's a sometimey guy. And that's why there was weight gain. And yeah, he's going through a lot of stuff, but you got to keep the main thing. And he showed up out of shape at his pro day, and he didn't finish his pro day. And there is a cause for concern there. So, yeah, he's not falling to 16, though. Don't fool yourself. He's not getting out of the top 10. Okay. I've seen this movie before. I've been doing this long enough. Barring some kind of catastrophe with him, the rest of this process, if he stays clean the rest of the way, I'd bet any amount of money he goes in the top 10 still. Okay. I doubt he gets past Chicago at 9, as a matter of fact. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Joe Rockhead writes, Any concern that EB makes Brissett look great? No. Jacoby Brissett is what he is. There isn't an offensive coordinator or a scheme or anything that can make Jacoby Brissett look like anything other than what he is. Jacoby Brissett, a professional backup quarterback. That's what he's established himself as. That's what he is, and that's not going to change. No offensive coordinator, no offense, no weaponry, nothing is going to change that. He is what he is. All right. So that will do it for me, your man Louie T here on the 321st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. There's college basketball on tonight. There's college basketball the entire weekend, right? Tonight, Saturday, Sunday, NBA basketball going on, getting closer to the playoffs. We're getting dangerously close to the start of the Major League Baseball season. That's next week. So a lot on the horizon. I know there are quite a few of you who are consuming the XFL at dangerous levels. Good for you. That'll be on this weekend as well. So indulge. We'll reconvene on Monday. Actually have a super chat here from Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Detroit sitting there at 6. Does a guy fall to them? Do they trade up? Do they settle for Hooker later? Do they even draft a guy? Curious team. I feel like if you're the Lions, you got to ask yourself, how good do we feel? Jared Goff's still young. We've all done this. I'm guilty of this. I can't speak for anybody else. I'm guilty of putting Jared Goff in a box, treating him like he's some lower tier quarterback, some placeholder, treating him like he is Jacoby Brissett or he's Gardner Minshew or he's a Ryan Fitzpatrick type. I'm guilty of that. Oh, when they traded for him, oh, okay. Sean McVay didn't want anything to do with him, couldn't wait to get him out of the building. He must stink. He's just going to be a placeholder for Detroit. Somebody's got to, run the team while they suck. Then they'll draft the quarterback to take the reins when they're ready to compete. That's not what they've done. And Brad Holmes, their GM, who was a part of the brain trust that traded up to number 1 to select Jared Goff, went and got him and rescued him from LA because he thought Jared Goff was a franchise quarterback. Jared Goff's still young. I don't know if they're interested in drafting a quarterback or not. Like, he played really well last year, did Jared Goff. Like, he's the leader of that team right now. I don't know if they're actually looking to replace him or not. They are an intriguing team. I don't know what they're going to do. They're very interesting, honestly speaking. John Livingston, my guy J.L. Smooth. Thank you for doubling up. Double up. Who writes, Lou, you got us at 27. Seeing a lot of edge rushers being mocked to us after the Harris signing. Who are some guys I can check out? I haven't done my mock draft yet, so I don't know who I have you guys taking. I haven't looked at any teams, other than my favorite teams, needs yet. So I won't really be able to dive knee deep in there, but edge rushers who will be around, I think, in that department. Let's take a look, see if I can help you out. So let me go to my site that I have, because I'm currently building a big board right now as we speak. So let's go to edge rushers, because you definitely need one. He'll be gone. He may be available. I think he'll be gone. So I think in your range, you're looking at a Nolan Smith out of Georgia. I think Lucas Van Ness will already be gone, but he'd be a guy to consider if he's available. And Keon White out of Virginia, out of Georgia Tech. I think those are the guys, and maybe Derek Hall out of Auburn are the guys that you'll probably be that'll be in your wheelhouse as you get to the late first round. Will Anderson will be gone. Miles Murphy will be gone. Tyree Wilson will be gone. I think Lucas Van Ness will be gone, honestly. And you could make a case for Nolan Smith being gone. Keon White is interesting because he's still making that conversion over. He's still super raw. I think that's going to see him drop in the draft. Lucas Van Ness is very interesting. I think he's going to ultimately be gone, but this is a super deep edge rusher class. So you could see 6 or 7 of these guys go in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if I think the number 6 in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if it gets to 7. I think you're going to be probably in the Nolan Smith, Derek Hall, Lucas Van Ness, Keon White range. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jamal writes, "Hey Lou, just catching up. Thanks as always. NHO, you know what it is. New Howell order. You know what it is." John Livingston, my guy JL Smooth, 105.3. JL Smooth writes, "Smash the like button, y'all. It's free. It helps content creators more than you think." Appreciate you, Lou. I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much. And he is right. You know, engaging, commenting, hitting the like button, those things help more than you guys can imagine. And as he said, hitting the like button is free. So, Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Joe Rockhead writes, "Golf equals car, capable quarterback that no one thinks is elite." You're not wrong. But if you build a proper team around a quarterback, you don't need elite. You don't have to have elite to win a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco is not elite. He won a Super Bowl, though. And it's not like their defense was dominant in 2012. It wasn't. But they had a good enough roster around him, and he played at a high enough level. And that's all you're looking for as a guy. Remember, Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl. It's not like Jared Goff is mince meat or something. He's not chopped liver. He had an extraordinary year in 2018 when the Rams went to the Super Bowl. He's capable, fully capable. The Lions are building something. And he may be the guy that can take them where they ultimately want to go. You're not wrong. He's in that same category with Cousins and Carr. And, you know, when Dalton was a starter, Andy Dalton, he's right in that neighborhood. Absolutely. Doesn't mean you can't win with him, though. So, anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 321st episode of the Louie T Network podcast. That was fun. I enjoyed that thoroughly. I hope you guys did the same. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Monday or Tuesday, sometime early next week for sure, as we dive into the draft heavy. We're going to start really turning our attention. We're getting close to turning the calendar to April. And then at that point, it's draft all day, every day. So we're getting close. I'm going to jumpstart that process probably next week. So look forward to chopping it up with y'all next week. Enjoy the weekend. You guys take care. God bless and good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.